All right, Kevin, teach us.
Okay, so I want to confirm this is Damon. I want to do this as the learning that we're going to do as a dedication to my late grandfather, Corporal Ben David Mordechai, or Kali as his English name was. I'm actually named after him, and that's also my Hebrew name. So it's actually his Yortzeit today. So just to may his Aliyah have and Neshama have an Aliyah, and hopefully the learning will give him lots of nachas anyway. So just
Oh,
to
man, we wish you long
uh,
life, Kevin.
thank you for my
And I
dad here
think
to
your
tell you.
grandfather would be proud that you share his name. You do a lot of good things.
Passed away 1962, 6 years before I was born.
Wow,
It's
that's a
quite a
long.
few years ago.
Listen, I wouldn't say that in a public forum. 1962, sure. Were you born in the late 60s?
Yeah, 68.
Wow, Kev. I'm the baby. Oh no, Brendan's the baby. All
You
right.
no, Brendan is.
I was born 65. I'm the oldest.
Yeah.
So if you guys
So
don't
I'm
mind
the middle
looking,
child. I'm the middle child.
You
Yeah.
all look surprisingly good considering you were born before the Vietnam. Okay, let's go. Kevin, teach us.
So in the Parashat Vayakel, which is the following parasha, this week is Tetzaveh, next week will be Vayakel. It talks about the main issue, one of the issues of, geez, I had my thought. The oil that was one of them, what I wanted to say was the oil had to be completely pure. Not even sediment was allowed, was allowed in the jar. It had to be completely pure oil. Uh, and that goes back to perfection with the avodah of serving Hashem with the begadim. The begadim had to be made a certain way with certain materials and certain patterns. And the oil also, everything had to be perfect, basically giving the best way to do the avodah in terms of material things, the best that one can offer. So we must try to do the best we can in our avodah and our service of Hashem, whichever way, if it's learning, avodah, whatever, try and do the best that we can and give up the best of ourselves.
Uh, yeah, I agree with you. Um,
Not
okay.
always easy,
Pardon?
not always easy, or it's a lifetime's work.
Yeah, it's not easy at all. Not easy at all. So, let's just go back to some of the concepts of of the Gemara, and this will be an aliyah for your grandfather's neshama. And what we said was that the Gemara starts off after the Mishnah, and it says, look, if you look at the secondary part of the Mishnah, when it speaks of Rabbi Yehuda, we're saying, well, we're not quite sure why the first set is executed, because if Rav Yehuda says that the second set of witnesses are a group of plotters, and every time there's a set against the defendant that says they viewed him commit the crime, and there's the secondary set and said that the witnesses couldn't have viewed the crime because they were with us in a different location, it starts to look suspicious. And therefore, according to Rav Yehuda, it would seem that none of them should be executed because it seems as though there is a plot. It can't be that the whole world was standing with the second set of witnesses at the time, every time there was an accusation against the defendant about having viewed the crime. So the Gemara wonders why the first set of witnesses were killed, according to Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara said initially, it goes to Rabbi Abahu, who said, according to Rabbi Abahu, they were actually killed in error. Because if the court had known at the time, the first witnesses would never have been killed. It was only subsequently when a secondary set went against the defendant that this other group said no, they couldn't have viewed the defendant commit the crime either because they were with us in a different location of the restaurant. And if the story keeps coming up, there's something wrong with the witnesses stating they were with the witnesses of the defendant viewing the crime in a different location, so they couldn't have viewed the crime. And then the Gemara says, okay, so Rabbi says they were executed in error, but why bring it up? Because what was, meaning what's the point of telling us an execution performed in error if you can't learn anything by it? So Rava had a different explanation, and he said, look, the Mishnah is saying if there's only one set, at the time they killed on the basis of the Hazama testimony of the second set, because at that point there was nothing suspicious about the second set discrediting that single set. However, after that transpired, if there's a extended case or a new case where another set of witnesses said they indeed saw the defendant commit the same act, and now that second set comes back and says, hang on, this new set was with us in a different location, we say, hang on, at that point the testimony is suspicious and no further first sets of witnesses are killed. But if they manage to get it in time, we don't even kill the first set, because there's a suspicion that has come a plot. So the Gemara says, okay, that makes sense. So why does it use this term first set? Because when you say you're killing the first set, it implies there are various sets that have witnessed the defendant commit this act, and every time there's the secondary set. It's not a different set of secondary people. It's the same set that said, oh no, these witnesses were with us in a different location, and these witnesses were with us in a different location. And it implies, by using the term first set as opposed to second and third and fourth set of Hazama witnesses, that then clearly there was more than one set, so why execute the first set? It's one thing if there's a standalone, but the minute the plot becomes unfoiled and there's a suspicious behavior, why use this term first as if there's sequential steps of witnesses against the defendant? The Gemara says, listen, we're not quite sure why the Gemara uses that term in the Mishnah as if it's sequential, but nonetheless, Rabbi and Rava's testimony stands. Then there was a related incident that we went through yesterday and said, look, there was a case with a woman. And what happens is that this is not a case of conspiring or plotting witnesses. This is a case of a woman that brought witnesses to court, and they were discredited by the judges because there were various contradictions in their testimony. And during the examination, the judges were not happy. So they threw those witnesses out of court. Then this lady brought a secondary set of witnesses and said they also viewed the incident and they were also discredited. And they were thrown out of court. This woman hasn't given up, and she said, look, I have got another set that saw this incident. But their testimony was technically not refuted by the judges because there wasn't any contradiction that they could see. So the general opinion is that they have to be accepted because there wasn't any contradictions in their testimony. Now, Brendan brought up an issue, and he says he takes exception to that. And the reason he takes exception to that is because something smells fishy. What does that mean? Is that if a woman brings two sets of witnesses and each set of witnesses was thrown out by the judges because their testimony was contradictory, just bear in mind it wasn't the first set against the second set. We're not talking about Hazama or plotting witnesses where a second set said the first set was elsewhere. All they did is they testified to having witnessed the crime and that this woman is indeed got a legitimate case. So the first set came. They were repudiated because of their contradictions. They were thrown out or dismissed. Then she brought another set, and they too were dismissed because of contradictions in their testimony. She brought a third set, and the judges couldn't find contradiction in their testimony. So Brendan said something's wrong. We can't quite repudiate the third set of witnesses' testimony because it seems as though there were no contradictions. But why should we accept it? And Brendan is in good company because Reish Lakish says the same thing. Reish Lakish says, this woman has been established as one who seeks out false witnesses, and we should therefore not accept the testimony of these witnesses either, even though they were not discredited, meaning the judge is uncomfortable. There's something going on here, even if he can't pick it up, if Reish Lakish was the judge. And therefore, he should either accuse himself and inform the new judge of his particular issue, of his prejudice or whatever, or he doesn't believe that this woman's witnesses are legit, even though they were not caught out. Now, there's a different opinion that Kevin had, and Kevin says, hang on a second, it doesn't mean that these witnesses were not legit, even if the woman herself was of irreputable background. Okay? So what does it mean? It means that according to Rav Elazar, he said, listen, even if she has been established as disreputable, have all of Israel been established to be so? Meaning, since there's nothing in their testimony to indicate that they are dishonest, we can't discredit them merely because they come and testify on behalf of a disreputable person. So what we are saying is that if we witness a particular crime, accident scene, or anything like that, we would love to be on the side of giving testimony for a good person against a bad. But often we can't choose the integrity of those that we are testifying for, because all we're doing is relating the events as they transpired. So therefore, you can't assume that every witness in Israel is corrupt just because this woman is disreputable. On the other hand, that's Rav Elazar. Reish Lakish says, well, you can. She's got a history of bringing two sets of false witnesses. And when we say false, we're not saying plotting or conspiring, just this contradiction in their testimony. So therefore, even if the third set has not been discredited, we should not believe them. Rav Elazar says, this woman is disreputable, but the first two sets were accurately kicked out by the judges based on contradicting testimony. And if the third set the judges accept, Reish Lakish should accept it according to Rav Elazar. Then Reish Lakish turns around to Rav Elazar and says, I'm really not happy with you. And the reason he said that is because this case, one time they were sitting before Rav Yochanan, and such a case came before them. And Reish Lakish actually said, this woman has been established to be disreputable. I've had a case like this before, different case, but same situation. And Rav Yochanan said to Reish Lakish with the exact same words Rav Elazar said to him, if this woman had been established as disreputable, have all of Israel been established to be so? So Reish Lakish turned and looked at Rav Elazar crossly, because he said to Rav Elazar, look, we contemporaries, if you have a different opinion and I have a different opinion, that's fine. We don't have to agree with each other. But if you heard this from Bar Nafcha, which was an affectionate term for Rav Yochanan, who is the leader of the Gemini generation, right? And you didn't tell me this in his name, and in fact, we have to both adhere to him, then what you've done is you kind of set me up for failure, because if you just quoted it in his name, I would have listened to Rav Yochanan, even if it didn't make sense to me. Does that make sense, guys, in terms of where we're holding so far? Guys?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So, any questions before we go on?
Yeah, why do they allow so if you're going to follow, I think it's a Reish Lakish, why don't they just not allow more than two witnesses that are that give dubious testimony? Why don't they just stop it at that point in time? That's what I'm saying, if the argument was correct.
So that's an excellent question. So if you're holding according to Reish Lakish, he would. He would. By the time the third set came, he wouldn't even have taken it that far.
Yeah, there's no need to listen to them, because whatever they say, you're not going to believe them.
Yeah, so according to Reish Lakish, he's not going to listen to the third set if she's already had two strikes against her. According to Rav Elazar, we're saying, listen, not everybody in Israel is dishonest. you might not particularly respect this person, but it doesn't mean the witnesses are dishonest. And the answer to that is, well, what happens if two sets are? It's likely the third set is as well. And then if Rav Yochanan was the leader of the generation and his system goes, it clearly means that he has a stronger argument to say that they were innocent. Do you get what I'm saying? Because he was the leader. And the only basis you can say is that, look, despite your funny feeling, you have to take each person on a case-by-case basis. Do you get what I'm saying? Because it could be, and we used a bit of a odd example yesterday, that this woman, say she had a car accident and somebody hit her at Norwood Mall, and very pretty young girl, and she sees there are a whole lot of witnesses, but they didn't quite like see what was going on because they were in a bit of a chat and a conversation and pushing a trolley. And she flirts with the first set of male witnesses and said, please, I don't have much bucks. Look, he hit into me or whatever. And they said, listen, we didn't see the same thing. And she said, look, but you did hear it. And you were there. It's not like you weren't at the shopping center. Please just make a statement and everything else. And then when the judge started asking them questions, they said, well, where were you? We're questioning two witnesses separately. Now, I was here and I was there. So how could you see it? What direction were you facing? And then the same thing happens with the second set. Again, two male sets of witnesses on the second set. And also, obviously beguiled by her charms and her singleness and perhaps that they might get lucky, they also were repudiated, not because they weren't witnesses, but it wasn't sufficient, because if you trying to extract money from your fellow, the onus is on you to prove your case before a shadow of a doubt. So therefore, the second group was struck down the roll. But it's possible there was a third set of witnesses that somebody at Norwood Security let you know afterwards was also there, but they actually had a better view of the accident, Gavin. And they're older men and they married, and they're certainly not going to really do it for her sake. They just saw what they saw. And therefore, the judges can't find any contradictions in their testimony. Gavin, are you even there? You've disappeared.
Yeah, I am listening. I can hear you.
It feels like davening. You know God's there. You just can't see him.
It's not as, I wish it was as good as that. Not.
But you're eating unlike God.
I'm just warming up food. I can hear you perfectly.
All right.
Behind him.
Okay, but do you understand the other opinion? Is that it could be that the third set, even though this woman's a bit of a player, it could be the third set were legitimate. And she just gave the number to the security guard and said, if anybody else viewed it, get them to call me. So it could be that they not contradicted their testimony and they passed the judge's litmus test. And therefore, if somebody smacked into, there's no reason why the third set shouldn't stick, according to Rav Yochanan. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
According to Reish Lakish, listen, two sets out, there's something fishy going on. But and that's according to Rav Elazar said, no, you can't necessarily do that. You have to take it on a case-by-case basis. And Rav Yochanan says you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so that's where we're holding so far. So the Gemara.
Say with the Cohen, I'll give you another example. A Cohen, if a woman's been widowed twice, then it's you shouldn't marry her, period, because it just it looks very suspicious.
No, I hear you. I think that case, and that's why many people can't listen to our shiur sometimes, because I'm not trying to use sexual examples, but they seem to come up a lot because men lose common sense when they've got a common goal. So what we're saying is if you've got a girl in her 30s, okay, a young lady in her 30s, early 30s, and she's pumping guys at Sandringham Gardens, and they're dropping dead of heart attacks left, right, and center, and she's a beneficiary on all their accounts. Needless to say, and she slipped them each Viagra. Their heart couldn't take what their private heart can with the new Viagra drug. And if she's accumulated a lot of wealth like that, and with 5 guys, enough to buy a condo in Florida from Sandringham in Joburg, then when the sixth guy gets in love with her, he should realize his susceptibility of dying is high. Although, what a way to go. So let's go into the next part of the Gemara.
You're trying to justify it now.
No, I'm not trying to justify. If you're going to go,
No, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's a good justification. Maybe it's worth it.
listen, yeah, if so
I'm
the
giving it.
only funny part is if you look at one of the bunnies from Hugh Hefner, from not Playboy, what did he do? Hustler. His last,
that was
he had a whole
Hugh
lot of
Hefner was
wives, and they
Playboy.
were in their 20s. Okay, he was 80. Okay, and he had a whole lot of them, and they all thought they were going to inherit him. He outlived almost all of them. I don't know how he did it. He must have had so much Viagra pumping through those veins. It was like formaldehyde for a corpse. So he outlived them. Even Pamela Anderson's husband, whatever his name was, outlived her. And he was like 30 years, 40 years older. So sometimes you can get too cute for your own good. I don't know. She went for some other orchid, shady pants. Who knows? Let's go retirement village. Let's go to the next part of the Mishnah. So the Gemara analyzes the basis of that dispute we discussed. And we say, look, on the surface of it, shall we say that Reish Lakish sides with Rav Yehuda? Because in our Mishnah, Rav Yehuda rejects the testimony of discrediting witnesses based on similarly suspicious circumstances. Okay, so what are we saying is, if you remember, what did Rav Yehuda say, Brendan? You're on mute.
Which part? He said a lot.
No, he said one thing only. We talk about Rav Yochanan. What did Rav Yehuda say? It's okay. Arthur, what did Rav Yehuda say?
My thoughts were on Lakish. What?
Okay, anybody knows what Rav Yochanan said? Rav Yehuda.
Yeah, the third, he said the third opinion,
which was?
that you can accept the testimony on the third.
No. Rav Yehuda didn't say that, guys. Rav Yehuda says
that you shouldn't. Yeah,
No,
after the first two are discredited, you can't accept the
Yeah, well,
you
we're not good
shouldn't
with names.
even attempt
Didn't
to accept the third. Is that what he said?
No. Okay, so I'll tell you.
I agree with Brandon.
It's okay, guys.
Yeah, Arthur, try.
I'm going to share the Mishnah. I'm going to share the Mishnah. Just give me a second. Okay, hang on. I'm happy to go through this. Just give me a second.
We're not very good with names, so
No,
Yeah, that's it. I think there's
it's
just
okay,
so much,
guys, there's no
so many
issue.
facts.
Yeah.
we might have the wrong person.
So
That's why.
look at what. Okay, so let's go back to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said, listen, you might have a case where there's a set of witnesses that said they saw the defendant kill this person at Santon City at 9 a.m. And there's a second set of witnesses that said they were with us in Durban at that particular time and date. And then if that's the case, we execute the first set of witnesses because they're found to be plotting witnesses for their crime. And then the Gemara says, well, what happens if this occurs again? And still others came with the same testimony as the previous two sets of witnesses, and they discredited them through Hazama as well. Even if the scenario was repeated 100 times, all of those who were discredited or executed as Zomim witnesses, the testimony of the two witnesses that the other 100 sets were with him somewhere else is believed to be established, all 100 sets as Zomim. So the rabbis turn around and says, listen, even if this pattern and the scenario repeat itself, where a second set discredits the first set, and they get the reciprocal penalty if it's between the sentencing and the carrying out of the verdict. Well, let's say it's before, but they obviously are cancelled as witnesses because they're not subject to Hazama because it was before the verdict. Either way, if this keeps repeating itself, we keep executing the set of witnesses that said they saw the defendant commit this murder, because the second set have said these witnesses too were with us elsewhere. And Rav Yehuda says he doesn't accept this opinion of the rabbis because this is known as a group of plotters who have plotted to discredit anyone who testifies against the accused. So he's saying it is absolutely inconceivable that every group that claimed to have witnessed that crime happened to be elsewhere in the company of the discrediting witnesses. Thus, their testimony is rejected and only the first set of witnesses are executed. So, we are saying here that Reish Lakish, it would seem, to agree with Rav Yehuda. Because what does Reish Lakish say? He's saying something is... I'll just wait for Gavin.
No, I'm listening. Go ahead.
Thank God my self-esteem is intact. Can I wait for you a second?
No. Sorry, I haven't eaten.
Arthur?
And you want to guys hear something interesting about Rav Reish Lakish? What his pet's name is?
Yeah.
Loch Ness.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Arthur, Damon. Arthur, which one is your split personality? The real you or the still image?
Yeah. All right, so guys, let me go back to what I was saying, is that the Gemara is making a comparison, and it says in mindset, does Reish Lakish agree with Rav Yehuda? Because let's see what Rav Yehuda says. Rav Yehuda is saying that, listen, if the scenario repeats itself more than once, we definitely know that the set of witnesses that keep saying the first set against the accused was with him in another location. It doesn't sit right. There's something fishy. It can happen once, but what? Were they with every other set of witnesses that ever accused the defendant? They've got some relationship with the defendant that they don't want him to die, so they're saying whoever is witnesses against the defendant, we're going to say they were with us somewhere else in a different location at the time of the crime. Rav Yehuda said this really smacks of a conspiracy. Something's wrong. Do you get that, guys?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so Reish Lakish has got the same mindset. He's saying, listen, we're not dealing with Eidim Zomamim here, but what we're dealing with is a disreputable woman that brought two sets of witnesses, and each set were discredited by the judges because when they did cross testimony, they had conflicting and contradictory testimony. So if two sets were thrown out, by the time there's a third set, I don't want to believe them, because like Rav Yehuda with Eidim Zomamim, something's fishy here. So the Gemara is saying, could we say that Reish Lakish and Rav Yehuda have got a similar mindset? You get it?
That's the part I missed. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what the Gemara is suggesting. So in the case of Rav Yehuda, he's saying, look, this is a group of plotters that every time there's a set of witnesses against the defendant, they were with them somewhere else in a different province at that same restaurant. Something's off. We might have to execute the first because nothing is suspicious, and if it's too late, it's too late. But if there's other witnesses that are against the defendant, we don't execute the first set because we can see there's a plot. And Reish Lakish says, well, if this woman, even though it's not reciprocal penalty of plotting witnesses, it's certainly a case where they are suspicious witnesses because two sets were thrown out. Why should we believe the third? So Rav Yehuda and Reish Lakish, under different circumstances of looking at witnesses, are suspicious of both and says it's not going to fly. Whereas the rabbis turn around and say maybe they would seem to side with Rav Yochanan. Why? Because Rav Yochanan said, listen, if two witnesses were discredited because there was contradiction in this testimony and they were testifying on behalf of this woman, and then another two witnesses were discredited because of the contradictory testimony defending this woman, okay? And then there's a third set. We can't say the third set, if the judges accepted their testimony and there was no contradiction, should be throwing off, because we have to take it on a case-by-case basis. And it would seem to indicate that Rav Yochanan would go with the opinion of the rabbis that say even if the scenario with Eidim Zomamim occurs 100 times, where a second set of witnesses keeps discrediting the witnesses that are against the defendant, and said this set that was against the defendant couldn't have viewed the crime because they were with us elsewhere, the rabbis say, listen, we take each case separately. So the Gemara is saying, could it be that Rav Elazar and Rav Yochanan side with the rabbis in terms of mentality, and Reish Lakish sides with Rav Yehuda in terms of suspicion and conspiracy? Do you get that? Guys, any feedback?
Repeat that last part, sorry.
Arthur, what did I say?
I heard repeat that last bit, please.
All right. What am I saying? Arthur, you must have listened to something. I can't hear him.
Our brain's moggy at the moment. Our brain's moggy at the moment. It's cold, so I'm getting it. I can't remember the name. It's just like it's blur.
All right. So let me just say that, Kevin, can you give it over?
Not like you.
All right. So let's keep it simple.
No.
The Gemara is
Yeah.
saying Reish Lakish is suspicious. When you've got two groups of witnesses that have been contradicted and they are dismissed by the judges, and they were brought by this woman to defend her particular vantage point of the court case. If she brings a third set, we don't even have to listen to them because something is fishy here. And therefore, it's saying that it would seem in mentality that Reish Lakish, who's of this opinion, would agree with Rav Yehuda, that in the case of Eidim Zomamim, when you keep having a set of witnesses, which is a secondary set that says every time there are witnesses against the defendant and say he committed this crime at this date in this place, they say, no, those defendants were with us somewhere else at the time of the crime. And Rav Yehuda said it's very suspicious. So it seems as though both Reish Lakish and Rav Yehuda say that when something is suspicious and a pattern repeats, even though the one is a case of contradictory testimony and the other one is of plotting witnesses, you're dealing with a discreditation of witnesses, and therefore they have a similar mindset. Can you understand that part, guys? It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Then
They both say that you shouldn't deal with the third set of, because the first two were discredited.
Rav Yehuda, who
and Rav
Yochanan.
Rav Yochanan both had the same view.
No. Rav Yochanan is the opposite view.
No, not Rav Yochanan.
Says Reish Lakish is suspicious when you've got a track record of fishy behavior, and so is Rav Yehuda. If it happens,
so they were just the same.
A second set of witnesses that keep saying, when another set of witnesses go against the defendant, no, they were with us in a different place. If it happens more than once, and even if we've executed the first set, we're not going to execute a second set on the basis of Eidim Zomamim, because now it seems as though that second set is suspicious. And Reish Lakish is saying, if there are two sets that this woman brought and they were discredited because of their contradictory testimony, the third set are going to be suspicious. So it seems as though Rabbi Yehuda and Reish Lakish have a similar degree of track record and suspicion. Okay? Then it says, then maybe Rav Yochanan and Rav Elazar, which are of the same opinion, which is you take each case separately, agrees with the rabbis. So just because a second set of witnesses have testified against the first set saying they were with us somewhere else, and their Eidim Zomamim were executed in that case, and the same witnesses say this pattern again, if there's another set of witnesses that say the defendant committed this crime, then the rabbis say we take it on a case-by-case basis. So that would seem to imply that they agree with Rav Elazar and Rav Yochanan. It's a case-by-case basis. That's what it would seem. Do you get it?
Yeah.
It's trying to align the concepts between them. Guys?
Got it.
Brendan?
Sorry, just repeat that last part. Thank you. Sorry.
About the case-by-case basis. I missed the lead up to that. Yeah.
So, you've got two people that are suspicious of repeated behavior when witnesses seem to create a problem. The one is Reish Lakish, who said this woman brought two sets of witnesses. If the first set were rejected because of their contradicting testimony, and the second set were rejected because of contradicting testimony, we don't trust this woman to bring a third set of witnesses. And we're not even going to hear them out. Okay? And that would seem to be like Rav Yehuda, who says in the case of Adam Zomamim, that when a second set testifies against the first set, and that first set are killed, if there's another set of witnesses that come and said, we also saw the defendant killing this person at Santon, and that same second set said, no, they were with us in Durban at the time of the crime. At that point, Rav Yehuda said, these second set are not to be trusted. How's it that they could have everybody with them in a different province the minute they testify against the crime? So they're both suspicious of track record behavior. Whereas Rav Yochanan, who's of the same opinion of Rav Elazar, and saying that even if this woman brought a third set of witnesses, those witnesses could be legitimate, because whilst this woman manipulated the first two sets because she didn't have money and she was like very flirty with them, it didn't mean that the third set didn't witness the crime. And therefore we take it on a case-by-case basis, and that would be the same as the rabbis, who say, for example, that if the first set were made to be Adim Zomamim by a second set and they were killed, and there's another set that testifies against the defendant, but the second set, they were also with us at the restaurant at this time and place, we can take it as a separate case, even if it repeats itself, meaning we judge each case separately. So it would seem as though Rav Yochanan, Rav Elazar, and the rabbis give the benefit of the doubt and take each case separately, it would seem. Whereas Reish Lakish and Rav Yehuda is saying, if there's a suspicion and something doesn't smell right, it ain't right. We're not going to repeat the mistake. It would seem that way.
If
All right.
you're a judge on the bench, then are you allowed to sort of go with your gut feel?
Yeah, you can recuse yourself in the case if you don't want to convict somebody. I don't think you can convict somebody on a gut feel, but you can certainly say something feels offish here, and I'm going to tell the new judge who takes it over what my suspicions are, but not corrupt his opinion. But I can't be unbiased now because I think there's a plot. I just can't prove it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll go into it more tomorrow. Cheers, guys.
At what point do the rabbis and these last two guys, what's their name again?
Rav Yochanan and Rav Elazar.
Yeah, Rabbi Yochanan. Yeah. At what point do they say enough's enough?
So it would say, I think they're less worried in the case of this woman bringing another set of witnesses. I think the bigger problem is the rabbis that say it repeats itself 100 times. We kill the first set of witnesses. That's more